Dhabba, only beautiful walls. In association with Sensodyne Daily Sensitivity Protection, Voltas Pure Air Adjustable AC.
India's super global flex. India bows to none. Forges its own path. After Modi-Putin, now Modi-Biden handshake. Critics can moan, this is India's path.
The big handshakes and hugs have happened in Tokyo. All eyes are on what the Quad alliance can actually do vis-a-vis China. There are very big questions. The bonhomie, the body language, and the dosti is all there for the world to see. But if push comes to shove, what can the Quad really do to China? I must warn you, it's a complicated answer. It's not black and white. But I'm going to call a spade and tell you exactly what the answer to that question is. Right here on 5 Live, the headlines first. Varanasi court fixes Thursday for big Gyanvapi hearing to decide on maintainability of the Hindu side's plea. Wazu Khana to remain sealed, but namaz to continue. Delhi court reserves order for June 9th in the Qutub Minar Wapsi case. Hindu side wants restoration of Hindu deities on the site. Archaeological survey says no proof of relics in the original spot or brought from outside. BJP rips apart Rahul Gandhi for meeting prominent anti-India voice and UK MP Jeremy Corbyn. Says the Congress MP is courting India baiters in London. Congress hits back by uploading a picture of the Prime Minister with Jeremy Corbyn. World lavishes praise on Modi's pandemic fight, from US President Biden to Japan's Kishida and the Australian leadership. All raise a toast to India's COVID fight back and vaccine Maitri. Congress MLA's son in Madhya Pradesh on a shocking drunk rampage rams his car into a vehicle after caught drinking inside his luxury vehicle, hurls abuses, boasts about being the son of an MLA. India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi have come in for huge praise, in case you missed it, on the day of the Quad meeting in Tokyo. India, the United States, Japan and Australia, and all of this over India's tackling of the coronavirus pandemic and the manner in which it helped the entire region and many parts of the world. It was one of the big takeaways from the third Quad summit in Tokyo today. Take a look.
The world is raising a toast to India and Prime Minister Modi as the highly anticipated Quad summit concludes. US President Joe Biden led the Quad, lavishing praise on Prime Minister Modi for his continued commitment to democracy.
Minister Modi, it's wonderful to see you again in person. Thank you for your continuing commitment to making sure democracies deliver, because that's what this is about, democracies versus autocracies, and we have to make sure we deliver. Thank you for the extraordinary leadership.
But this was not all. Sources revealed to India today that Biden paid tribute to India's stellar COVID fight back during the Quad leaders' closed-door summit. Biden lauded Prime Minister Modi for handling the COVID pandemic successfully and contrasted India's success within parameters of democracy with autocratic China's failure to handle the pandemic despite a brutal crackdown. He added that Prime Minister Modi's success showed the world that democracies can deliver and busted the myth that autocracies like China and Russia can handle the rapidly changing world better. Biden's remarks were unscripted and impromptu as he made a special intervention to convey them to Modi before his prepared remarks. In fact, newly elected Australian PM Anthony Albanese said that vaccines supplied by India to other countries have made a massive difference on the ground.
Our relationship with India is a very important one, and it was a great honour to meet with Prime Minister Modi.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida also appreciated India's contribution and recalled that Indian-made vaccines delivered under the Quad Vaccine Initiative were received with gratitude in Thailand and Cambodia recently. With Paulami Saha in Tokyo, Bureau Report, India Today.
But everyone's wondering, what is the point of this entire Quad alliance if it's not a security alliance like NATO? For instance, like in NATO, if any one member country comes under aggression from outside, for instance, Russia, then the other member nations of NATO are mandated to come to the victim country's aid. It's not the same case with Quad, which is why many of you will be wondering, what is the point if this is supposed to be focused against China? Then if push comes to shove, will these countries work together militarily to check China? Watch this report, it answers your question. All the body language and bonhomie in the world, all the right things said, even a super viral photograph that's become the face of the Quad in 2022. But for all the massive gains of this grand coming together of 4 global democracies, what will the Quad actually do if the big gorilla in the room, China, crosses its limits? Well, for starters, the 4 countries have taken pains to emphasize that the Quad is not a security alliance like NATO, and therefore does not automatically mean that members will jump to each other's aid in case of Chinese strategic or military aggression. But Chinese aggressions have escalated for a while now, remember. From the borders of Ladakh to the Senkaku Islands near Japan to the South China Sea. China has made it clear that it won't be tempering its deep-seated expansionist impulses. But that doesn't mean that the Quad doesn't have a response plan, except it's anything but responsive. And India Today brings you an exclusive inside view of what it would actually look like. The first protocol involves the 4 Quad nations tying down China by forcing it to bolster defenses in multiple theaters. From the Pacific to the Indian Ocean to Ladakh to Taiwan could dissuade China from its expansionist push. The second Quad protocol would involve the nations aligning their offensive capabilities with all 4 countries capable of long-range missile strikes on China, repeatedly reminding Beijing that such strikes are possible in coordination with each other. While the Quad isn't a security alliance in the strict sense, the Quad is an umbrella for several subset alliances between India and Japan, India and Australia, and other countries in the region, together posing a cumulative military balance challenge to China and chipping away at Beijing's expansionist tendencies. With India's long-range missiles, air force and formidable navy, US aircraft carrier groups and nuclear submarines, Japanese hunter-killer submarines and the Australian Navy, the four Quad nations have formidable militaries. But as we've just demonstrated, the plan to contain China is not reactive but proactive to ensure that things never reach a point where full military hostilities are ever deemed necessary. Bureau Report, India Today. And we've got some breaking news coming in now. As the Quad meeting was taking place in Tokyo, Japan now says that Chinese and Russian jets were conducting an exercise nearby. Japan has basically projected this as a provocation by China, saying that while the Quad meeting was taking place in Tokyo, Chinese and Russian jets were muscle flexing and trying to project power nearby. Now this gains a lot of significance because obviously the Quad is aimed, even though it does not explicitly claim to be pointed at any one country, but the Quad is most certainly directed at checking China's rise and expansionist tendencies. That's what the Quad is really about, in the Eastern Hemisphere. And now Japan saying that Chinese and Russian jets have been provoking during the entire Quad meeting. I want to go across to India Today's Poulomi Saha, who's in Tokyo at this point of time. We also have with us Gaurav Sawant, who's been tracking all of these developments. Poulomi, to you first. Big piece of information coming out from Tokyo. Japan says that Chinese jets have been flying nearby, as a kind of signaling mind games during the Quad summit. What are you hearing?
Well, absolutely. That's a very serious charge which is being made by Japan when it says that Chinese and Russian jets were in fact conducting some sort of an exercise as the Quad meeting was in fact underway here in Tokyo. Remember that the Quad leaders, and specifically US President Joe Biden, they've categorically in fact had some very strong words to state against China and Russia as well. Russia, of course, in the context of Ukraine and the invasion today, of course, it marking 3 months since Russia invaded Ukraine. And this was something which was referred to in the joint statement by the Quad leaders as well, saying that they do not support any kind of hostilities or aggression. And they do believe that dialogue is the only way forward, and the territorial sovereignty and integrity of any nation cannot be challenged because the Quad believes in a rule-based international order, and that is the statement which came out of the Quad as well. They did extensively discuss Ukraine, with all countries in fact putting forth their own responses to how they view the crisis, and then of course stated categorically that peace and stability is the only way forward. As far as China is concerned, of course, it was the subtext of this entire Quad summit. We saw that statement categorically state clearly that
Poulomi, I'm going to come to that statement in a second. I want to just focus on the breaking news for a moment. Gaurav, what are you making of this? Another instance of Chinese power projection, mind games, psychological operations, flying jets as claimed by Japan, not very far from Japan apparently, while the Quad summit was taking place in Tokyo, Gaurav.
Shiv, this is the new world order that's emerging in a way, and India had cautioned against this. India has constantly been cautioning against pushing Russia too close to China, saying that it would have consequences for the entire world, and that is exactly what appears to be happening. That while a Quad summit is happening, four powerful democracies, the United States, Australia, Japan and India, you have Russia and China, according to Japan, carrying out a flypast not far from that area. So as you very rightly point out, this is muscle flexing. Russia in a way beholden to China for the assistance provided in more ways than one in the past 3 months after Russia invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February, and the fact that Russia would increasingly require China more in terms of an exit, in terms of resources, financial resources, and also to sell its energy in terms of oil and gas. China would be a big market. The fact that it's being the US dollar is being eased out, and RMB, won and ruble trade is happening. So to a very large extent, Russia is beholden to China, and this is a cause for concern for the entire democratic world.
And Russia is even more dependent on China at this point of time after the Ukraine conflict, with the entire West pretty much pulling out from Moscow. China is the big fallback as far as Russia is concerned. India and Russia have their own separate relationship. But as far as China is concerned, vis-a-vis the Quad, it looks like Russia and China have their own tango going when it comes to mind games. A new world order is definitely emerging. Poulomi has been reporting from Tokyo, and she sent us this report of anti-China protests that have been taking place in that country. Remember, many of the problems that India faces with China on its borders are faced by Japan as well, pertaining to the Senkaku Islands and other territories. Take a look at this report. Poulomi was right there in Tokyo when these protests were happening.
Right outside the Japanese Prime Minister's office in Tokyo, where the Quad summit has just concluded and the bilaterals have also concluded, you can see these protesters who've gathered over here bearing these placards which basically say, as you can see, Quad requested action to the Quad summit. They want the Quad to act against China, become the breakwater of the China's expansionism. They're protesting China's expansionism. Realize the free and open Indo-Pacific is what they stand for. They have their various causes, but the concern area is one, China. What are you protesting over here, sir?
South Mongolia.
You're from South Mongolia. Okay. What about the protest placard that you're holding? What do you want to say about China?
We protest for the I'm Japanese supporter and we request to Quad
to sanction China. To sanction China. That is their request as well. Become the breakwater of China's expansionism. So what are you protesting here today?
Yes, I also ask sanction to China.
Okay, so you're Japanese, but you're supporting their cause.
Yes, I'm Japanese. Yes.
Ma'am, you say do not allow Chinese hegemony. That is what. Where are you from and what are you protesting?
I'm from East Turkestan.
Okay.
China is that country. China genociding Uyghur people.
Okay.
3 million, 5 million Uyghur people, China genociding.
And you want the Quad to act against China because of the genocide of the Uyghur people.
Yes.
Okay, so that is your that is the demand that you make from the Quad summit and its leaders. As you can see over here, this gentleman also, in fact, is a Uyghur. He's also holding up a poster. Can you tell us, ma'am, what's on his poster?
She's three years old, very young Uyghur woman.
Okay.
China
kidnapping you. Oh, okay. So China has killed her, and he is a Uyghur as well.
In Tokyo.
Uyghur man, family, genociding your here family, genociding my family, genociding here family.
Okay, so that is the protest that they're making over here. They're saying these people of Uyghurs, basically they're saying that China has abducted their family, China has kidnapped their family members, China is killing their family members, and they want the Quad summit and its leaders to sanction China, to not allow Chinese hegemony to break away, in fact, to ensure that China's expansionist policy, where it is expanding its wings across the Indo-Pacific in its aggression, is stopped immediately. And that is the request that they make of the Quad summit. With Shweta Singh, Poulomi in Tokyo for India Today.
So there is a protocol that the Quad can kick into action in case any one of the member states actually, comes under aggression. Remember, two of the big states that are part of Quad, that is Japan and India, already face territorial aggressions by China in the Senkaku Islands and on the borders of Ladakh. So the natural question is, what use is the Quad? What is the Quad going to do if members of the Quad come under aggression of this kind? And that's a question I want to take to Gaurav and Poulomi while we play out for you the many scenarios of our understanding of how the Quad will actually play a role. Gaurav, the Quad is not a security alliance. The member states have, made it a point to emphasize it is not a NATO-like alliance which mandates one country coming to the aid of another, member country. So, to your understanding and appreciation then, Gaurav, isn't it true that the Quad's way of checking China is more preemptive rather than reactive?
Shiv, you've actually hit the nail on its head. You're absolutely right. It's more to do with economic cooperation. It's a lot to do with intelligence sharing and real-time intelligence sharing. And that is where Quad will play a very important role. Economic cooperation between these four countries, it's a long-term impact, resilient supply chains, and that is where it will truly hurt China. But it's not like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member countries. An attack on one is seen as an attack on the entire NATO forces, and all will act together against the aggressor. It's not like that. We've seen the example of Chinese aggression and transgressions along the line of actual control. While the Americans provided intelligence, but it was India that had to take all action on our own. Point one. Point two. This cooperation is huge in the maritime domain. It's in the Indian Ocean region where these four powerful navies and countries and democracies can play a very critical role in checkmating China. And that is where action against black shipping, and this is where, Quad has traveled some distance.
Yes.
Anti-submarine warfare, anti-ship warfare, hunting Chinese submarines in the Indian Ocean region, checking black shipping, where China plays a very critical role. All of this is where these countries play a crucial role, and also, Shiv, resilient supply chains, shifting them out of China more into India with Japanese capital, American technology, and a lot more coming together.
Absolutely. So a lot of economic preemptive actions by the Quad can actually keep China from, constantly invoking its expansionist tendencies. Poulomi, you've been in Tokyo for the last few days. You've gotten a sense of the, political mood there as well. Japan is an old ally of the United States. There are American military assets that are based in many parts of Japan. How much faith is Japan itself putting into the Quad as a kind of military response measure to the increasing aggressions of China? And Japan knows these aggressions all too well, Poulomi.
Oh, absolutely, Shiv. Japan knows all these military aggressions all too well, and it is hoping that, of course, this is not a military grouping as such. The Quad's mandate is not such. But, of course, it is hoping that as Quad moves forward in its initiatives and the goals that it had set, given the fact that, the Quad, in fact, has really gotten into action post-2017, and especially in the COVID era, really in terms of vaccine cooperation, that's when things started coming to fruition with the top leadership of the heads of states of these four countries actually coming on board. Up until then, it was just the foreign ministers, who were meeting. But then, of course, now it has become much more important. And Japan is hoping that as the others also are, in fact, victims, if you might say, of China's expansionist policies and its aggressive and belligerent nature, there will be some stricter measures that are taken in order to send out a very clear message to China, as has been done in today's joint statement, which is a very important and a significant one, where it categorically states that the Quad...
Poulomi, thanks very much. We're going to let you go for the moment because you've got the Foreign Secretary of India who's addressing a press conference on the back of the big Quad summit. Let's cut across to that press conference and listen in live.
Cooperation among Quad partners, as also between the Quad partners and the countries of the Indo-Pacific for free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific, aimed at peace, stability and prosperity in the region. Discussions during the summit were focused on mutually beneficial consultations, and as I said, agenda was constructive and the tone positive. 2. Support for ASEAN unity and centrality as the Quad and the countries in the Indo-Pacific pursue their shared goals in the region. 3. Focus on common efforts to respond on COVID-19, including in particular the post-pandemic recovery and strengthening of health security and health-related infrastructure. 4th, work together to promote infrastructure delivery as also efforts to bridge the infrastructural gaps in the Indo-Pacific region and do it in a manner that does not burden the countries of the region with unsustainable debt and unsustainable infrastructure projects. Fifthly, the Quad leaders also welcomed a new Indo-Pacific partnership in maritime domain awareness, a regional initiative to help the countries bolster their capabilities to respond to humanitarian and natural disasters, as also to combat illegal fishing. Next, shape and build partnership for greater cybersecurity and for transparent, trusted and reliable supply chains across the region, including in particular in the field of critical and emerging technologies. Quad leaders also issued strong condemnation of all forms of terrorism and a call for expeditiously bringing to justice the perpetrators of the Mumbai and Pathankot terror attacks. Also, coordinate more effectively and timely responses to the humanitarian assistance, disaster relief incidences in the region in future through the agreed Quad HADR guidelines. Prime Ministers also participated in the formal launch of the Quad STEM Fellowship, which will be offered to 25 students from each of the Quad countries. Prime Minister, towards the end of the Quad Summit deliberations, also put forward specific proposals that could contribute to guiding the Quad agenda in months and years ahead. Some of these proposals include: 1. Need to take solid initiatives on the field of climate finance and sustainable developments. 2. Emphasized on the importance of building appropriate platforms for the industry and businesses in the Quad countries and between the Quad countries and the Indo-Pacific countries to forge partnerships in the field of critical and emerging technologies. And 3. Informal and formal mechanisms to strengthen partnership among the like-minded countries in the areas of common interest. As I mentioned upfront in the beginning, besides participating in the Quad Summit, Prime Minister also held bilateral meetings with President Biden, President Kishida, and the Prime Minister of Australia. Prime Minister Kishida and Prime Minister of Australia. First, with regard to the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. The two leaders appreciated the importance and need of regular interactions between the top leaders of the two countries. The meeting was warm and substantive, and also a very important opportunity to discuss significant areas of our bilateral engagement and also the important regional and global issues. They also reiterated their shared commitment to maintaining a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. Prime Minister Modi and President Biden welcomed the signing of the Investment Incentive Agreement that happened yesterday. This agreement will boost investment by the U.S. Development Finance Corporation in sectors of mutual priority. You would perhaps be aware, DFC's current portfolio in India amounts to investment of around $4 billion. We understand it has also planned investment of around additional $1 billion in sectors like renewable energy, supply chain diversification, agriculture, MSME financing infrastructure, and healthcare projects. Prime Minister Shri Modi welcomed participation of US industry in the Indian defense manufacturing under the Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat program. A new initiative for critical and emerging technologies, ICET, was launched to forge collaborations, including with the participation of government, industry, and other stakeholders on both sides in this very important area of critical and newly emerging technologies. As I mentioned earlier, both leaders reiterated their shared commitment to free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. Yesterday, the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi also attended the launch of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework of Prosperity along with the President of US and Prime Minister of Japan, Shri Kishida. A joint statement has also been issued to underline the vision and key elements envisaged in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework are already available in the public domain. I would simply mention that the IPF framework is structured around 4 pillars, and these are currently being negotiated among the Quad countries. And these 4 pillars are: 1, relating to trade; 2, supply chains; 3, infrastructure, clean energy and decarbonization; and 4, tax and anti-corruption. Collective discussions, as I mentioned, under these pillars will be initiated following the launch of this framework, and the following final contours of this would emerge based on discussions among the Quad countries. During his bilateral meeting with Excellency Prime Minister Kishida of Japan, both leaders undertook a comprehensive stock-taking of the entire framework of bilateral partnership to carry forward our cooperation in diverse areas, including in the field of defense manufacturing in India, a skill development partnership, trade and technology partnership, cooperation including for resilient supply chains in the region, and other areas. This is Honorable Prime Minister Modi's 5th visit to Japan since becoming Prime Minister, and his 2nd meeting with Excellency the Prime Minister of Japan. Prime Minister Kishida has invited Prime Minister Shri Modi to visit Japan later this year for the annual summit. In fact, during the summit, both Prime Ministers underscored the importance of maintaining the momentum of regular high-level exchanges between the two countries. Earlier during the day today, Prime Minister Shri Modi also met in reflection of the importance attached by Japan to India-Japan ties. He also met with 3 former Japanese Prime Ministers, including Excellency Mr. Suga, Excellency Mr. Yoshihiro Mori, and Mr. Shinzo Abe, who, as you know, are also the key leadership of the Japan-India Association. Prime Minister Shri Modi and former Prime Minister Shri Abe, they share a good rapport over long years of interaction. We met 15 times as Prime Ministers. In 2014, during their annual summit, ties were upgraded to a special, strategic and global partnership. The Japan-India Association itself has been instrumental in promoting people-to-people ties and economic linkages between the two countries. To deepen the link between a stronger and wider India-Japan commercial partnership in a manner that clearly has a link with India's trade, technology, investment and development priorities, Prime Minister Shri Modi held extensive and a wide-ranging interaction and discussions with the leaders of Japanese business and industry yesterday. In addition, Prime Minister also had a very vibrant and robust interaction with Indian diaspora in Tokyo. Prime Minister Shri Modi also held a bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister, His Excellency Mr. Anthony Albanese, earlier today afternoon, of course on the sidelines of the Quad Leaders Summit. Prime Minister congratulated the Australian Prime Minister for his election victory, and both leaders reviewed the multifaceted cooperation between the two countries under the framework of comprehensive strategic partnership that includes important areas of trade and investment, defense manufacturing, renewable energy, in particular the green hydrogen, education, science and technology, in particular the new and emerging areas of technology, agricultural research, sports, and people-to-people ties between the two countries. Both Prime Ministers affirmed their desire to continue the positive momentum in the bilateral relationship. Prime Minister Modi extended an invitation to his Australian counterpart to visit India at an early date. I would stop here and would be happy to take few questions that might be there in the room.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Before I take questions, just the ground rules. Please identify yourself and the organization that you represent. Also keep your questions very, very sharp. I saw Madhav there, please.
And limited to the topic.
Yeah, that of course. And please limit it to the visit to the Prime Minister here. Yeah, Madhav, the floor is yours.
Sir, a sensational claim being made by Japan.
Could I have your name?
I'm Madhav from Times Now. Yes. Sir, a sensational claim being made by Japan. They've said that China and Russia had joint military exercises in the northeastern part of Asia, even as the Quad summit was underway, where military jets, fighter jets were flown. Do you see this as some kind of a deliberate positioning on part of China and Russia, because all of this has happened while the summit was underway? And clearly the statement also reflects a number of points which would directly reflect on China and Russia. Thank you.
Sure. I think before we go to the next question, let's capture all the China questions in the room first.
Yes, sir.
So let's go one by one and then we'll come back to that in one single shot. Yeah, please.
Sir, Manish Chand, India Rights Network. My question is that, if one studies the joint statement carefully, many of these initiatives and remarks seem to be aimed at China. Clearly, there was a lot of discussion. Could you give a flavor of the discussion on China or China-related activities at the summit beside what is there in the joint statement? And also an infrastructure partnership. $50 billion have been committed. Now, how is this going to be, what about the individual contribution? How is it going to work out? And is it a kind of response to China-led BRI or a similar mode of connectivity? Yeah.
Sure. Please.
Naveen.
Sir, I'm Naveen from ANI. My question is, sir, that what is the status now on IPEF? Are we a part of IPEF? Are we negotiating it? Can you give us some more clarity on this, sir?
Okay. Is there anybody else?
Any other linked question which we can capture?
Yeah, please go ahead. That's okay. Go ahead.
Sir, what exactly were things that were, Akshay, NDTV, what were the things that were mentioned regarding India's handling of COVID? Did President Joe Biden mention that India's handling of COVID was better than China?
Okay. I thought you need to take the seat and then I'm happy to give you the floor, Abhishek. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Perhaps the final China
Please
question.
Introduce
I'm Abhishek Kapoor from Republic TV, sir. Perhaps the final China question. Was any defense cooperation or military component within Quad discussed in the context of China? Or is it being conceived at any stage in future?
So I think we'll stop here and give you the floor and
Yeah.
then, unless it's China related.
Yeah.
Is China related? Okay, then why don't you take that question first?
So, Polemy from India Today. My question is about the response that came in after the launch of the IPEF yesterday from the Chinese foreign minister, where he said that this Indo-Pacific strategy is going to be a failed strategy. I believe it was in the larger context as well around this the Quad summit and the IPEF as well, but your response to the same.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think let me just get the last question out of the way. I don't think it's correct for me to what foreign minister of another country says. So I think that's a question which should rather actually pose to them. But I think let me just go back to what I said right in the beginning, that the discussions during the Quad were based on a very constructive and forward-leaning cooperative agenda between the Quad countries, as also between the Quad and the other countries of the Indo-Pacific. Naturally, during the various agenda items of the Quad, the discussions did focus on what could be the way forward for cooperation among the Quad countries. The leaders also discussed the challenges and the opportunities that are there in the Indo-Pacific region. They also looked at how different economic priorities, as I mentioned in my remarks, those relating to the COVID-19 pandemic, the post-COVID recovery, building of health preparedness in terms of health infrastructure so that such pandemics could be fought, were discussed very extensively and discussed in terms of what they can do forward. I think the economic dimension of how the countries of the Indo-Pacific attend to their common needs, build each other's capacities, strengthen the resilience of their economies. How do they shape an agenda of trade, technology and investment that builds the economic capacities and individual economies of Indo-Pacific region is something which is essentially the sum and substance of the Indo-Pacific economic framework. Somebody asked the question whether India has, as you saw, Prime Minister Shri Modi was present at the launch of the IBF, and as I mentioned right in the beginning, the cooperation within the IPF will be structured along 4 of its pillars, and I mentioned those pillars. Now the discussions among the Quad countries will start on these 4 pillars, and based on that they would decide which pillar to progress at what speed, etc. And actually this is something in which all the countries which were part of the IPF launch would be involved in those conversations. I think the question relating to infrastructure, 50 billion plus, how it will work, what will happen. Again, I'll refer back to my comments which I said. That the leaders, when they discussed way forward of cooperation within the Quad, as also the challenges, it was mentioned very clearly by the leaders, including in particular by our Prime Minister, that the infrastructure cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, the filling up of the gaps in the infrastructure within the region have to be in a manner that it does not result in unsustainable burden and unsustainable bouquet of projects for the Indo-Pacific. And for this, the Quad countries need to come together. And the figure that you saw is a projected figure. It seeks to kind of contribute assistance. And naturally, that infrastructure cooperation which will flow out of this will precisely address these points, that the projects are sustainable, they are demand-driven, they meet the specific needs of the Indo-Pacific country. There was, health of COVID. I think I've already answered. Each country in the region has actually responded to their COVID needs in a manner that they need to respond to within their own national context. But I think there was a clear realization that the countries of the Quad, and this was put forward right at the time of the first COVID summit, which is the Quad Vaccine Initiative, which has evolved since then to include not just COVID vaccines, number one, not just expansion of the basket of vaccine within COVID-19, but 3 also aspects relating to building up of health infrastructure, the increase of vaccine manufacturing capacities, including, for example, the particular project in India. All those elements now form part of the Quad's outlook and Quad's approach to the entire question of COVID-19. It, of course, has an element relating to the post-COVID response. I must mention that there was a general appreciation in the Quad's deliberation, including also in a couple of bilateral meetings, of the manner in which India has been able to shape a very comprehensive response to the COVID-19 pandemic in India, which includes all elements of the comprehensively all elements of COVID response.
Okay, the highly anticipated Modi and Biden one-on-one bilateral talks were held to further strengthen US-India mutual ties. And what shone once again was the India story, as Biden heaped a huge amount of unscripted praise on the Indian leader. Take a look in case you missed it.
Work in India, supporting vaccine production, clean energy initiatives, and I'm also glad we're renewing the Indo-US Vaccine Action Program.
The biggest world leaders all heaping praise on India. Another example of a rising and shining India. From the COVID fight to our thriving democracy, US President Joe Biden, in a completely unscripted exchange, praised Prime Minister Modi for handling the COVID pandemic successfully in a democratic manner and even contrasted India's success with China's failure. The message from Biden is just another indication of the thriving ties between India and America at a time when several baiters have tried hard to dismiss the rising India narrative. Just contrast Biden's tough talk to India on Russia a few months back to their conversation now.
In response to his aggression, we presented a united front throughout NATO and in the Pacific. The Quad is, with the possible exception of India being somewhat shaky on some of this, but Japan has been extremely strong, so has Australia, in terms of dealing with Putin's aggression. I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation today. Mr. Prime Minister, there's so much that our countries can and will do together, and I'm committed to making U.S.-India partnership among the closest we have on earth.
What's helped overcome the brief freeze between India and America is also the warm ties between the POTUS and Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi's first in-person meet with Biden was in September 2021 during Modi's visit to America, when Biden welcomed Modi with a hug. At the G20 summit too, the bonhomie between the two leaders was on full display. Even at the Quad summit in Tokyo, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden were seen having a laugh with the newly elected Australian PM, Albanese, followed by a beaming handshake. In fact, Prime Minister Modi has always shared a warm relationship with his US counterparts, be it Trump,
a warm hug, symbolizing the great Indo-American friendship,
or Obama. Prime Minister Modi's huglomacy with the US President has translated to solid ties between the two countries, and even a challenge like Russia has been overcome. With Paulomi Saha in Tokyo, Bureau Report, India Today.
And since some news just coming in from the Kashmir Valley, a policeman has just been murdered by terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir's capital, Srinagar. Saifullah Qadri, the policeman's 7-year-old daughter has also been injured in this gun attack by terrorists. The daughter of this cop has been injured. Terrorists opened fire as this policeman's daughter clung to her arms. She has received a gunshot wound in her arm, has been rushed to hospital. Both are grievously injured. A policeman and his 7-year-old daughter grievously injured in a terrorist attack in Srinagar. I want to go across to Ashraf Wani for more on the story. Ashraf, what can you tell us? 7-year-old daughter of a policeman also injured in this shootout.
Absolutely, and really unfortunate part of this terror attack in the Saura area of Srinagar. In fact, in the last 15 days, it is the second attack on a cop in the same area. And yesterday, we spoke to the Inspector General of Jammu and Kashmir Police, Vijay Kumar, exclusively, where he said that there is apprehension that these target killings will continue. Because you may remember yesterday, Jammu and Kashmir Police arrested 2 TRF militants. From them, 15 brand new pistols were recovered, and also 30 magazines and 1 silencer. And Inspector General of Police clearly said that we have seen spike in the targeted killings where cops, minorities are being targeted with the pistols. And it is being seen that this kind of attack is also another targeted attack where a police constable was targeted in his residential area of Saura in Srinagar, and he succumbed to the injuries, whereas his daughter, who was with his father, she is injured in that attack. She is being treated in the hospital, and so far the security forces and police have cordoned off the whole area where this terror attack took place. They are trying to nab the attackers, but in these kind of situations where there is a lot of traffic on the roads and a specific target killing, to nab those attackers is very difficult so far for the security agencies. But area has been cordoned off, and all focus is on the daughter of this cop, how she could be treated and she could get well soon.
Very unfortunate update coming in, Ashraf, on this story. The policeman, the policeman who was injured in this gun attack by terrorists has died. His 7-year-old daughter, who was in his arms when he was shot, has also sustained gunshot wounds. She's fighting for her life in a hospital in Srinagar right now. But the very unfortunate update, Ashraf, is that the policeman has succumbed to his injuries.
Shiv, absolutely. What we are getting from the hospital sources that this injured cop who got injured in the initial attack has come in the hospital, but his daughter is stable. She's being treated in the Srinagar hospital in the Soura Medical Institute, which was nearby hospital where this terror attack took place. And now, as I said, that area has been cordoned off. It was a busy day, busy afternoon in the locality where militants, after attacking this policeman, managed to escape from the area. But now all the entry exit points in the area have been sealed, and there is a massive hunt going on to track these attackers. But so far, police, we are waiting for the inputs from the police. And what I said, that this is another targeted killing, what we have seen for last so many days going on in the Kashmir Valley. We started from the killing of Rahul Bhatt, a minority Kashmiri Pandit employee in the Chadura, then another policeman in Pulwama on other day, then another civilian in the South Kashmir, and today this policeman unfortunately became the target of the terrorists in the Soura area of Srinagar, where he has now succumbed to the injuries in the hospital, and his daughter is serious and being treated in the hospital.
Very, very sad news, and we're all praying for the safety and recovery of that little girl. Her father has died in that very same attack in which she, 7 years old, has sustained a gunshot wound in her arm. We'll update you on her safety in just a bit. But meanwhile, the BJP has launched a fearsome attack on Rahul Gandhi for meeting with a notorious British member of parliament who has unstoppably heckled and abused India in the past, and also expressed sentiments pro-separatist Kashmir. Well, the Congress's hit pack says, well, Modi met him as well. Big fight over this. That's next.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999892171.
Why does PM Modi prefer to travel at night during any foreign visit? While Modi visits Japan to attend the Quad Summit in Tokyo, he follows the same travel pattern he does. One of his party members even pointed it out. But what's the reason behind this? Is it a preference or a strategic choice? During his foreign visits, PM Modi has always followed a fixed pattern. He mostly boards flights at night to save time. He then attends engagements and meetings the next day and flies overnight to the next stop. During his recent trips to Germany and Denmark, PM Modi spent just one night in Germany and Denmark each. By turning this into a habit, PM Modi has managed to save time and resources during his foreign trips. During his Quad visit, Modi had a total of 23 engagements in around 40 hours of stay in Japan. Some sources even said that he does it to tune his sleep cycle according to Indian time. So, in short, it's his preference, not something to do with his security.
watching India Today. You are watching India.
Now it's the latest political fight that's broken out over something that Rahul Gandhi has done while abroad. And let me draw your attention, ladies and gentlemen, to this photograph of Rahul Gandhi and Sam Pitroda meeting with Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party and British MP who has been famous for supporting Kashmiri separatism and freedom and been a pretty prominent heckler of India and Prime Minister Modi. Well, Corbyn, who is leader of the Labour Party, has previously batted for Kashmiri separatism. The BJP now is accusing Rahul Gandhi of liaising with India's enemies, being an India Virodhi. The BJP has accused Rahul Gandhi of allying with India's enemies. But the political fight has taken a new turn with the Congress's Randeep Singh Surjewala tweeting a picture of Prime Minister Modi with the same British MP, Jeremy Corbyn. The picture is from 2015, from the Prime Minister's maiden visit to the United Kingdom. The Congress is asking, does this picture mean the Prime Minister has endorsed Corbyn's views on India? In that case, why is the BJP now attacking Rahul Gandhi? Sam Pitroda too has put out a statement saying Jeremy Corbyn is a personal friend of mine and came over for a tea at the hotel. Nothing political about this, but with foreign visits in our country and with the current political atmosphere, everything makes for a big fight.
जहां जहां देश के खिलाफ चिंगारी होगी वहां पे राहुल गांधी मिट्टी का तेल लेके खड़े होंगे। ये वो व्यक्ति हैं जो भारत के खिलाफ षड्यंत्र करते हैं, और राहुल गांधी वो अदृश्य शक्ति हैं जो षड्यंत्र को ताकत देती है.
It is the culture of our country, as also the world leaders, to meet various people. I may have a difference of opinion with you. You may have divergent opinion completely contrary to my interest. But people meet, they get a picture clicked. Getting a picture clicked is not an act of terror, nor is it an anti-national act. And if this is the criteria, may I ask, why was Prime Minister Modi meeting up with the same person? Why was Prime Minister Modi actually having a formal engagement with the same person? Does it mean Modi ji has endorsed the entire agenda and every anti-India remark or every remark against our interest by that person? Will the media dare to ask the Prime Minister and the BJP spokesperson that question?